Did you know that the way most stores store their matcha actually ruins it? I'm sure you've seen this before, matcha lying on store shelves, in room temperature. This really isn't ideal, especially for long-term storage. There are 5 things you want to avoid when you store matcha, and in this video we'll talk about those 5 things, and we'll also give you exactly what you should do when storing matcha. Hi, my name is Yuki, I'm the founder of Tealife, and in this channel we break down Japanese tea to make your next cup of tea more fun. The first one is sunlight. Sunlight is terrible for matcha. Keep away at all costs as much as possible. Sunlight breaks down the chlorophyll and the aroma of the matcha. It makes the color and the taste both dull. That's why I'm so surprised when I ever see matcha or any type of green tea for that matter sold in plastic or glass see-through containers. It does nothing to protect the matcha or the green tea from sunlight. I would honestly never buy green tea that's sold in such kind of container. Number 2 is a bad one as well. It's heat. You want to keep matcha away from heat as much as possible. Heat significantly enhances the process of oxidation, and oxidation is obviously an enemy of matcha. Excessive heat is out of the question, but even at normal room temperature, it does slowly degrade the matcha, and you'll notice the difference over time. So if you compare a matcha that's in the refrigerator and outside the refrigerator over time, even if it's before the best buy date of the matcha, you'll still be able to tell the difference. That's how sensitive matcha is. Now, one common storing mistake that I hear is keeping the matcha can right beside the refrigerator. The refrigerator usually emits heat, and it actually heats up the matcha, and that will really quickly degrade the matcha quality. So you want to be careful about that especially. Number 3, this is obvious, but it's humidity. And especially in countries like Singapore or Japan where it's high humidity, we have to be careful. Humidity also makes storing matcha in refrigerator more difficult as well, because when you pull the matcha outside of the refrigerator to open it, then it'll create condensation, it'll make the powder wet. So you have to be careful about that one. Number 4 is oxygen. Oxygen will obviously oxidize the green tea, especially matcha, again, because it's so sensitive. Every time you open the container, fresh oxygen will come in and will continue to oxidize the matcha. That's why it's actually important to find the size of a container that's not too big. You want to reduce the amount of air in that container. Also, obviously, it's really important that that container is airtight. Number 5 is odors. Matcha has this characteristic of absorbing odors really well. In fact, green tea, matcha, is actually a very good odor absorber. You can actually use it to remove the odor from a refrigerator. But, of course, you don't want to do it with matcha, because once it absorbs the nasty odor of the refrigerator, the matcha will taste like that. That's obviously not something you want for your tea. So those are the 5 things you want to avoid when storing matcha, because they will degrade your matcha very easily. However, avoiding all these 5 things at the same time is not that easy. How do you do that? So let's talk about how to store the matcha properly. Now, the easiest way to think about this is to separate long-term storage from short-term use. For long-term storage, this is actually quite straightforward. You're not using the matcha, it's sealed in the container, it hasn't been opened yet, then just put it in a fridge or a freezer. I recommend freezer a little bit better, but basically the same thing. Keep it somewhere cold. When the matcha is stored in a cold environment like a freezer or a fridge, airtight, then obviously you can avoid all those 5 components we just talked about. However, there's an important caveat. When you want to actually use the matcha, and when you take the matcha outside of the fridge or freezer, you have to be careful, because when you open it right away, it's going to develop condensation due to the difference in the temperature between the refrigerator and the outside temperature. And again, condensation is an enemy of matcha because it's humidity, basically. It's actually worse. So what you want to do when you actually want to use the matcha, you want to take the matcha out of the fridge or freezer, and you want to leave it outside to return it to room temperature. You want to maybe wait for 1 to 2 hours to completely return it to room temperature before opening. Now that approach kind of makes sense, but it's not really practical, because you don't want to wait for 1 or 2 hours every single time you want to drink matcha. So how do you go about this? So this leads to the short-term use part. That's why instead of taking the matcha outside of the refrigerator for daily use, it's much easier if you just keep a portion out for daily use outside of the refrigerator. So what you want to do is you want to take 1 week worth of matcha and put it into a tea caddy or natsume and use it, just keep it outside. And your daily matcha can be taken from this container. Because you'll be only using for like a week, the quality of the matcha won't really change within that short amount of time. You just want to make sure that the tea caddy is stored in a place where there's no sunlight and no heat. That's it for this video. I hope this helps. Please try this setup and let me know how it goes. I recently did a video talking about what kind of matcha is healthier, so if you're interested in that one, please take a look.